Welcome to Inside Personal Growth Podcast. Deep dive with us as we unlock the secrets to personal development, empowering you to thrive. Here, growth isn't just a goal, it's a journey. Tune in, transform, and take your life to the next level by listening to just one of our podcasts. Well, welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisin, the host of Inside Personal Growth. And Dr. Stein, everybody knows me, but the reality is they don't know you. But the gentleman with the, I'm going to say the great haircut and the mustache on the other side here of this video is actually Dr. Stein, and he's joining us from Toronto. Good day to you.
Good day to you. Nice to be with you, Greg.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on, and we are going to be speaking about a topic that's near and dear to his heart called Hardiness. And the subtitle is always what people buy books off of, Making Stress Work for You to Achieve Your Life Goals. This is a Wiley book. To learn more about Dr. Stein and his work, he also is a co-author on this book. It's Paul Bartone, is it? Baritone?
Paul Bartone.
Yeah. And the website is Steven, Steven, Stein.com. There you can learn more about Steven, his books, his media, his contact. You can get in touch with him. I'm going to let the listeners know a tad bit about you, Steven, before we get started into investigating and going deeper into the book. He's a world-renowned clinical psychologist, international best-selling author, and sought-after speaker, and founder and executive chair of the Multi-Health Systems, MHS, a publisher of scientifically validated assessments over 40 years, which have been named the three-time winner of the Profit 100 Fastest Growing Companies in Canada, one of Canada's best managed companies since 2013, and Canada's 10 most admired corporate cultures to work for. He's a leading expert on psychology assessment and emotional intelligence, and has consulted with the military, the government agencies, including Canadian Forces, U.S. Air Force, Army, Navy, Special Units, the Pentagon, FBI, and the list goes on. Dr. Stein consults with numerous reality TV shows, including Big Brother Canada, The Amazing Race Canada, Master Chef Canada, Bachelor Canada, that must be a cool one, Real Housewives of Toronto. I didn't know there was such a thing. Bachelor in Paradise and Blown Away. So what do they utilize Dr. Stein's gifts for? They want to find out if they can get the best guests on their shows possible. There's actually a gentleman here in Del Mar, California. Richard somebody is his name. He's world renowned for actually profiling the people that appear on those shows. That sounds like interesting work. Do you enjoy it?
Yes, it's a lot of fun. It's great work.
Yeah, I bet it is. Well, look, you've done a lot of studies. You're a psychologist. You spent years studying and then coming up with these assessments. What inspired you to write Hardiness, Making Stress Work for You to Achieve Your Goals? And what do you hope that the readers out here are going to take away from it? I made a note to you earlier, when people hear stress, it's almost like they want to run the other direction. But the question is, certain stressors can be good for us.
Right. Well, what made me get into this is kind of a long-standing mission I've had. I started my career as a traditional clinical psychologist and transformed into the business world. But early on, a lot of my time was spent looking at people that had serious problems and issues. I worked with kids and families, where there's ADHD and depression and anxiety. And at some point I decided, it's time to look at what's right with people and not just what's wrong with people. Instead of fixing people, seeing what allows people to succeed in life and make them successful. And that led me into the area of emotional intelligence. And from there, I moved into the area of hardiness. And one of the things that really inspired me to move in this area was my co-author, Paul Bartone. He was a senior psychologist in the U.S. Army, but also did research and taught at West Point. And he's a retired colonel. But he had done about 20 years of research in this topic, showing how important it was for everything from leadership to dealing with health issues. And, a lot of his research was confined to sort of military journals and research journals. And I said, Paul, we got to get this out into the real world. We got to get this out, or the other world, into the business world and to everyday people. And that's where we joined on this mission together to write the book and make it more accessible to people.
Well, I'm glad you did, because, this is a topic, and I could see Wiley picked up on it when you sent them your book, that they saw this as a good fit for the business world, obviously, because Wiley kind of caters to the business world. That is who they are. Can you explain the concept of hardiness? I know people hear the word, they're like, hardiness. Well, I know what that is. I'm great. I can withstand anything. I'm resilient. And how it differs from other approaches to stress management?
Sure. So hardiness is really based on what we call the 3 C's. And again, that's based on a lot of years of research looking into this and looking at what differentiates people who deal well with stress versus those who don't deal so well with it. So the first C we look at is what we call commitment. And what that means is having a purpose in life, having a direction, having a bigger picture, something outside of yourself that you see as important in your life. So for some people, it could be religion. For others, it could be sort of a political mission. For others, it could be working for the environment or something that's bigger than yourself. So commitment is really important. The second,
can I ask you to throw in a question here? Because
sure, go ahead.
In commitment, for a lot of people, they look at that word and it brings up like long-term commitment to something, right? I'm committing to something, a marriage or raising a child or doing whatever it might be. And then on the flip side of that coin is just, how do I want to solve being thriving and being alive and having this freedom to kind of move around. Because sometimes when you hear that word commitment, you're also thinking about, well, am I going to lose some of my own freedoms in the process of this? Am I going to lose other sides of me that I'm giving up? And I remember this statement because you and I talked about this. Dr. Jordan, who you used to work with, talks about this process in one of his podcasts that I was listening to, is our contract with the future and what we actually give up now for the contract in the future. And that is a big commitment, right? That's like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice something here in the now for this contract with the future. Can you maybe give us a little bit of, a dialogue about that? Because I've actually been thinking a lot about that, and I'm going to be 70 in July. So I look at it and I go, man, what have I actually given up to get?
Yeah, and that's going to vary. One of the groups we deal with are elite athletes, and for them to reach their goal, their dream of winning a major championship, for example, it involves making certain sacrifices in their life. They may give up parts of their social life. They may do, there's other things they may sacrifice in terms of that big goal. Now, we're not asking everybody to make those huge sacrifices, but I think part of the commitment, that sort of contract with the future, is to decide, what you really want in life, what's really important for you, and what are you willing to do to get there, right? And there may be things that we give up along the way. There may be certain vices or other things that will interfere with that goal. And what we find is that people who are able to sort of stay on that line, stay working towards that commitment, manage to deal better with difficult situations in their lives.
Well, what practical strategies can individuals use to develop and strengthen this sense of commitment when facing stressful situations?
Well, we usually try and back up and prepare for it before you actually reach the stressful situation. So if you take a look now at your life and you try and identify what are the things that are really important to you, to your future, what are the things that you really believe in? Again, identify, is it your religion, your commitment to God? Is it politically, you want to make certain changes in the organization or in your community, something that you really want to commit to? And then we get people to outline aspects of their lives, their family, their work, their social life, and to rank order those things into, what is most important and what is sort of less important.
Well, what do you do to help people who go to the space of burnout to literally prevent that? Because in today's society, we're seeing so much of this loneliness, burnout, stress as a result of it. And then I find just a level of kind of complacency. It's almost like they've zoned out. They're just being thrown so much. And now we're talking about a big word, a commitment. It's like, okay, I see the 3 C's, which we're going to talk about all of them, by the way, folks. But, the reason I'm throwing these questions in is because the listeners out there today, including myself, we find ourselves saying, oh, wow, I'm almost in overload. I'm almost to this point of burnout. How much more can I really take? What practical advice would you have? Because that is a stressful situation.
Well, there's a couple things in there and it involves more than one of the C's. So what is commitment, which is knowing what is my bigger picture in life? Right now, I'm being overwhelmed with things. Everybody wants my time. Everybody wants me to do things. So the second C that we talk about is challenge. So if I can step back and look at those things and look at them differently, look at all those stresses as maybe a puzzle or something to solve. If I said to a friend of mine, I'm overwhelmed, I got all these things on my plate, I can't cope with it, what would you do? What would your friend advise you? And usually your friend would advise you to sort of back off some things. What's your don't do list? What are the things that you don't have to do and you can step away from? And then allow you to focus more on the things that are really important to you and the things you're excited about or interested in or really want to do. So it's really a matter of a mindset and refocusing your priorities.
I get it. And, what we all deal with is, I'm going to call it this balancing act, balancing work life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Balancing the to-do lists that everybody has, the things that they'd like to accomplish, and then having a larger, more vision and a goal to try and reach something greater. And you say control is another key component of hardiness. And when you get burnt out, it's almost like you feel like you're out of control. How does the perception of control influence our response to stress? And what techniques can you help to enhance the sense of control? Because when you go to burnout or you go to this level of just complacency where it's like you're just like in inertia, you just don't want to do anything, right? It is a state of, I'd say, mental state, in many cases of depression. There's a sense of depression associated with that because you lose your aim, you lose your goal, you lose your commitment, you lose a lot of things. What can you help people with by giving them some ideas here about keeping this sense of control?
Okay, well, first, we sort of backed up a bit to commitment. So if you are sort of in that depressed state, what we would do is try and find something that you do care about, something that motivates you. And it may have been something you haven't done since you were a kid. Like I look back and found music that I love playing a musical instrument. And that sort of changed my view. When it comes to control, then the issue becomes, well, what can I do in this situation? What do I have control over versus what I don't have control over? I don't want to waste my time sort of doing things or expending it on things I have no control over. I blame other people, or I blame the boss, or I blame my workplace for getting in my way. That's not helpful. What I'd rather do is focus on what can I do myself to change this situation? What can I do to redirect where I'm going? So stop blaming the environment, stop blaming those people around you, as difficult as they may be, and look inward and say, what are the levers that I have some control over and that I can manage?
It's good advice because, when you get into that state, sometimes you don't look for that. You're saying things are out of control, or if they are out of control, I don't know how to get them back in control. And I think once you find one thing you can control, right, that you realize what it is, it's the first tee up, right, on the first hole of the golf course to, make it out and say, hey, I'm going to go get the ball in the hole kind of thing, if you understand the analogy there. Can you provide some examples of how individuals can shift their mindset and view stressful situations as challenges rather than threats? I think in the prior case, it's threats. In the case where I have a goal or an aim or I'm committed, it's really not a threat, it's a challenge.
Exactly. So in terms of challenges, again, it's the mindset. It's the way we view things. It's how we approach the situation. So we step back, and instead of getting all emotionally involved in all the stuff that's happening to you, it's kind of looking at it a little bit more objectively and saying, what can I do here? How can I solve this puzzle? And treating it more as a puzzle to be solved. And what are the levers that I can control to do that? Maybe I have to avoid certain people. Maybe I have to change my daily routine. Maybe I have to find somewhere else to work. But, looking at it objectively and taking charge of yourself and making those changes is really important.
Mm. And do you have any particular stories that you can relate to us of people that you've either counseled or situations that you've seen where they've actually been able to shift the mindset and come from these 3 C's successfully where they maybe weren't?
Yeah, we give a number of stories in the book, and one of them that I really like is the story of Bianca Andreescu, who was a tennis player. And when she was around 12 or 13 years old, she really had this image of winning the U.S. Open. Now, that's a pretty big goal for a lot of people, but she visualized it, and she got to visualize it so well. She actually imagined herself receiving the winner's check, being there right in the stadium and winning against major tennis players. Well, visualization was really helpful in terms of getting that commitment to staying on path, because playing tennis, being a professional athlete, requires a lot of sacrifices, as we said earlier, giving up your social life to practice every day and to do these routines and to get better. So that was part of the commitment part, that she had a goal and something, a dream that she worked towards. In terms of the challenge, she had to meet challenges all along the way. For example, not going to parties with her friends because she had to practice, and all sorts of things that she had to go through in order to keep this dream alive. And the final part was control. And when you're an athlete, you can't control all the elements. And I guess the one that I sort of talk about in the book, when she ended up at the U.S. Open and in the finals, she ended up playing Serena Williams. I mean, that's awesome, right? But what happened was the crowd didn't like her. The New York crowd didn't want a Canadian to win the U.S. Open. And they booed so loud she could hardly hear herself think. But in that time, she took control. She said, I can't control the booing of the crowd, but I can control the way I serve and all the practicing I've done, the mental practice, the physical practice. And she did it. She beat Serena Williams to win the U.S. Open by that sense of control, that commitment, and the use of challenge to overcome obstacles.
That is a great story. It really is a great story. And I'm glad you told it, because it puts a context around what somebody can do, especially all that booing. The subconscious mind, which is something that very few people, I think about on a regular basis, is a lot of places where this gets reprogrammed, right? Where we can actually reprogram. What advice do you have for people in wanting to kind of, albeit using a hypnotherapist or something else, to actually delve into reprogramming the subconscious mind? Because there's so much there that's making the ability to get this done hazy and ineffective, right? And who knows, it could be things from our past. It could be experiences that we've had. And being a clinical psychologist, I thought this would be a perfect question for you about how to actually take these 3 C's and utilize them into reprogramming the subconscious mind.
Yeah, well, reprogramming your mind is a challenge, right? It's not an easy thing. So often we need a guide, coach, someone who can help get in there and find out what's holding us back. Why do we keep making bad choices in life? Why do we not get away from the people that are toxic to us? So it's often helpful to have a really understanding outside person who knows these things and can help you reprogram yourself to find purpose and to overcome challenges and to understand what it is you can control and to stop you from the same circular mistakes that you've been making in the past.
Yeah, very good advice, because I mean, I think many people during the course of their years on this planet spend a lot of time trying to get clear about the things you're talking about, this commitment, this control, the three C's. But if for some reason it's hazed out, you use the example of affirmations, of being able to visualize and create the dream for the future. I know sometimes it's almost like when you try and think about it, many listeners out there, and there have been times for me as well, where you just can't come up with anything. You're just like, it's like a block. You following what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you can't access it because you're so busy doing the day-to-day stuff that you have to do to just get it. And you say, well, take time for this. And they go, well, where am I going to find the time to really do that, right? Because they've gotten into a grind.
Well, there are small things you do. And we're not talking about huge time commitments with some of this. One exercise that we do with people, which is kind of helpful, is to try and set a goal for each day, something you want to accomplish each day. And at a set time each day, let's say 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, you take 5 minutes and you think about, how do I feel about today? Was I able to make any movement towards completing that goal? And, there's some really interesting research finding that people who are able to do that and find something positive each day will be much more productive, will be happier with their lives, and ultimately more successful with the goals that they want to achieve.
Yeah, I'm looking behind on your bookshelf there, and you wrote this book on emotional intelligence, and I think that it was the dummies book for emotional intelligence, and I have it here. There's been so much said about that in the workplace, and I want to talk to you about the principles of hardiness being applied in the workplace to kind of improve performance and well-being. And if you would, add in a sprinkle around us being able to use our emotional intelligence more effectively to do that, because the more emotionally intelligent we are, the more relatable we are in the ability to communicate with others and others to communicate with us. I mean, Goldman's work on emotional intelligence was really groundbreaking, right? I mean, everybody knows Daniel Goldman and his work on emotional intelligence. So if you would, hardiness in the workplace, how does it work? How can we make it work? And comment, if you would, on emotional intelligence to improve that.
Sure. So the way I like to think of it is kind of strategic and tactical. So the hardiness is the strategic aspect of your life, your commitment, your control, your goal, your ability. It's like your personality, as you were talking about, your subconscious, your deep down beliefs of where you want to go. And once you've got that established, that's going to help you set direction. For example, you're going to know that the work you're doing is the work that you really want to be doing. You're not doing some job just because you need the money or because you couldn't find another job. You're going to know where you want to be in your life, where you want to set your path. Emotional intelligence is kind of the technical part. These are the skills you need to get ahead. These are the skills of being good with people, the interpersonal skills, being able to understand your emotions and manage those emotions. They really are the sort of the topping, the icing on the cake that really helps you become more successful at work. And we spent a lot of years researching emotional intelligence, and now people who are strong in that are more successful in many ways in terms of their career. They're better liked, leaders get more done, their teams are more responsive to them. There's so much more we can accomplish if we use these emotional intelligence skills.
Yeah, so Dr. Stein, when you get a room of computer programmers together and you have to teach emotional intelligence, how do you start out?
Well, one of the things we like to do is to use an assessment, because they're very logical and rational, and they don't acknowledge emotions. So we've developed a tool called the EQI 2.0, the Emotional Quotient 2.0, that gives them really hard data on how they compare to thousands of other people out there. And we can compare them to other computer programmers or to accountants or lawyers or to salespeople who are much higher in these skills. And once they see that in front of them on paper, then it resonates to them because that's what they react to, right? Numbers, logic, rationality. And you can say, it shows here that your empathy is really low. How do you feel about that? What do you think about that? And they may say something, well, what the heck do I need empathy for? I'm sitting in front of a computer all day. Well, then we got to show them how other parts of their lives are important. Their ability to sell ideas to their coworkers, their ability to work with their boss, their ability to have a family life and deal with their kids. So we show how these skills are important in all aspects of their lives and the fact that they can develop them if they really want to.
Really good comment. I appreciate that. Now, we've heard about EQ, IQ, and I've recently come across SI, spiritual intelligence. Do you believe there is a realm of spiritual intelligence that we have, that we carry around and bring to the workplace that can make it a better place for us to work? If we bring that to work, there's actually a woman that I recently had on the podcast talking about spiritual intelligence.
Well, it's a newer concept and it sounds interesting. I haven't seen the data on it yet, but I'm sure it's something that we should explore, that, people who are more spiritual, and it gets kind of to the area of commitment that I was talking about. It's a belief in something that you feel can be beneficial to you and take you to the next level.
Yeah, her work is interesting. It's very deep. It's Cindy Wadsworth, I think it is. I can get you the information, but I spent a lot of time on how spiritual intelligence overall can help us be better at our own emotional intelligence as well, too. So what role does the resiliency play in the concept of hardiness, and how can individuals build resilience? Because it's really psychologically, when you look at stress, usually what's being spoken about, and I helped a company who created a wellness app for Mayo Clinic. And the psychologist that was really, there was a whole module on resiliency. And frequently they're teaching resiliency in corporate America. They're not talking about hardiness. Let's face it. They're saying, hey, you need to become more resilient. Here's how you become resilient. This is what you do, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through mindfulness, whether it's through all these various practices that are being accepted. And Mayo Clinic is teaching, meditation in the workplace through the app.
I agree. And resilience is important, but it's slightly different from hardiness. So resilience is about going through a stressful time or difficult situation and coming back to where you were before. So it's kind of evening you up to where we started from. Whereas hardiness, we see it as getting even stronger than you were before the stress hit you. It's almost like post-traumatic growth, some people talk about, where if you learn these skills in that situation, you become stronger. You learn how to challenge and you learn how to control things that you can control. You increase your commitment. That makes you even stronger. It's like going to the gym and exercising and building your muscles. And that's a big differentiator. A lot of the resilience training, which is really good, but a lot of it is kind of avoiding the stress, sort of relaxing and pretending it's not there, or learning how to control your reaction to some degree. Here, we're actually facing the stress head on and using it as a challenge and seeing, how do I overcome this? I'm not running away from the stress. I'm managing the stress and trying to get stronger as a result of the stress. So that's a bit of the difference. There's another.
I think not in defense of Mayo Clinic or meditation or any of this. It's just a fact. I think the tools that we're given to become more resilient, it's like I'm building my muscle, right? To have to learn how to deal with this, whatever muscle, it's really the mental muscle to deal with this. Versus, and when I look at the word resilience and I look at the word hardiness, I get that what you're trying to do is up-level people to say, hey, look, this is a ability to go up a stair step, to go up, to go up, to go up, to become more and more hardy under this, meaning thrive in these environments, versus using techniques that we would do. What would be two of the techniques that you would say can help me become more hardy on these 3 C's. I know, I get it that it's the 3 C's fundamentally. But what would you tell people to practice in the workplace to thrive, be hardier, and have much more, and I'm just going to throw this in again, emotional intelligence? Because if you have good emotional intelligence, really, all of this hardiness can come along with it. There's no mistake that you wrote a book on emotional intelligence and another one on hardiness. There's zero mistake there.
Yeah, they're all going in the same direction. No question about it. So what are the techniques you would use right away? Well, one I like to use is visualization. I think that's really important. The ability to see yourself where you want to be, to think maybe 10 years ahead and see where would I want to be, and to break that down into different aspects of your life. Where do I want to be in terms of my workplace? Where do I want to be in terms of my family? Where do I want to be in terms of my social life? What about in terms of fitness and exercise? Where do I want to be? So we would get people to sort of visualize that future down the road, their ideal life, their ideal self. And then we start working backwards. So then we work back to 5 years, and then to 1 year. And then we come back into month by month, and then we work our way down to almost a weekly or daily activity. What can lead us towards those goals? How can we get there? So that would be one sort of a technique that we would use with people to help them.
So you're forecasting to the future. We talked about this future note that we had with the future, and then you're regressively kind of going back to the year, the month, the day, and then the hour, right? Like, hey, this is what I need to be doing during the day to actually strive toward this particular outcome, that contract with the future, or whatever it might be that you want to call it. Yeah.
Yes. And when you talked about work-life balance earlier and the fact that we're overwhelmed by all these things, this helps you make those decisions. So it's not so much a matter of work-life balance. It's like, how do I do what goes towards my goal? How do I do the thing that matters most to me? But
we're being, pardon me for interrupting, but I think because of technology, we're frequently being derailed because we don't know how to put that stuff down, and that takes people off track, right? It really does. It takes people out. You ask people, well, how much time are you spending on social media, or how much time are you spending on just answering emails, or how much time are you doing? But then you ask them, well, how much time are you actually spending in contemplation or creativity, or the amount of time you spend doing that? And I think you'll find a decrease, which is why these corporations are attempting to provide opportunities for people to become more creative. I know that at my son's work, Adobe, they want creative people. So they say, hey, work from home, take time off, go surfing, go do what you need to do. Do the things that are enjoyable, because you need the release. And they understand the psychology of this, of the endorphins and of the oxytocins and of the things into your system. I'm getting a little more technical than we were going to get, but the point is that you get these highs, and these highs have to come, and they don't hardly ever come from surfing social media or answering emails.
Right, exactly right. And, if you look at the research of Jonathan Haidt, who looks at, the effect of cell phones on kids in school, it's exactly what you're saying. It's distracting. It's taking us away from where we want to be or what we want to learn. So that's a big part of what we have to do. Exactly what you're saying. Take time away from the technology and focus on what things are more important for us to be more creative, to be happy in our lives, and to pursue the goals that are really meaningful to us.
Yeah, it's a detox from one to an infusion in the other, meaning detoxing from the social media and the phone and the iPad and the whatever else it is, and the infusion of some activity that brings those oxytocins in there, that brings the higher levels of chemical release into our system that usually are related to higher levels of creativity, abilities to take greater risk, because that is part of it. You have to be willing to kind of do some risk-taking here along the way.
When we come to the end of our life, I don't think any of us are going to say, gee, I wish I answered more emails when I was younger.
Right. No, we're not. You're absolutely right. Because when you start to look at your finitude, and I think the older we get, the more we understand, all of us is not getting out, where none of us are getting out of here alive. And the reality is there is a day when we will take our last breath. And this is not being, trying to be morbid or anything, but it's true. It's just a fact of life. And if my listeners can take your 3 principles of commitment, control, and challenge, and take those 3 and insert them in to create a resilient, I'm just going to use the word resilient mindset, but call it a hardy mindset, the hardiness mindset, and to help them get to this longer term goal, that contract with the future. There's going to be, let's talk about it now, because all these 3 that you talked about, commitment, control, and challenge, how do your studies tell me that the amount of joy and happiness that utilizing those techniques actually brings to me as a result of that and me becoming hardier?
Well, a lot of the work we've done is, again, comparing different groups of people, right? People who are happier in a certain occupational group versus those who are less happy. People are performing better versus those who don't. So it's really been a matter of comparing groups. So the next stage is really putting people through that transformation. And there's some work on that in the coaching world, where people who have been coached, and hardiness was seen as a factor. When they're coached and they're starting off from a higher level of hardiness, they're much more successful in achieving their goals. And they found that was a more important factor than the relationship. A lot of times in both therapy and in coaching, we talk about the importance of the relationship between you and your coach or you and your therapist. But this study that looked at a large sample of people found that being at a proper level of hardiness was more important than even the relationship that you had with your coach. So you can learn these skills and see direct improvements as a result of it. And the studies we have, some reported in the book, do look at, I know one where we did, someone outside group, wasn't us, looked at emotional intelligence, had 2 groups, one with coaching and one without. And they used one of my books as part of that journey that the people went through, found significant changes comparing the treatment group with the control group.
Well, you've given my listeners a lot to think about today, and I want to thank you for being on Inside Personal Growth. And for all of my listeners, we're going to put a link to this book, and it's stevenstein.com, StevenStein.com. So in wrapping this up, is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with, Dr. Stein, regarding this commitment, control, and challenge, the 3 C's, which are the component parts of hardiness inside of your book? And if so, are there places where they can go if they feel lost? It's like, okay, I want to go to Steven's website. I can take an assessment. Is there a tool that I could take of yours that would actually tell me where I fit on the spectrum of these things, right?
Right. There actually is a tool called the Hardiness Resilient Gauge. Now, it's usually administered by someone who's trained or professional in it, but if you come to the website, I'm sure we could refer you to people, or if you want to be trained in it, there's an opportunity for you if that's, the area of work that you're involved in. So yeah, there definitely is a way to compare yourself to thousands of other people who've looked at how they score on those 3 C's and what areas are most important for them to develop as well.
Well, I figured you had an assessment, so I wanted to let my listeners know that there was an assessment out there, and it's the Hardiness Resilient
Gauge, the Hardiness Resilience Gauge, HRG.
Okay. All right. And so if you're interested, listeners, go to his website, contact him. They can put you in touch with somebody who administers those tests, because they obviously distribute those tests out to people that are using them inside the workplace, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Well, again, thanks for being on Inside Personal Growth. Thanks for taking the time with us, Dr. Stein. It's always a pleasure having somebody speak about a topic that I believe nobody has really heard about, hardiness. they have heard about resilience. They have heard about emotional intelligence from Daniel Goleman, and I would put a plug in. Go get his book on emotional intelligence. We have that one as well. I think I'm going to hold it up because it's right here. It's this one, Emotional Intelligence for Dummies. We did speak a little bit about it, but if you're new to emotional intelligence or you really want what I would call a very comprehensive viewpoint, you're probably better off going to this one than you would be starting off with Daniel Goleman's book. So nothing against Daniel Goleman at all, but this one here is what I would call the basics of emotional intelligence, right?
Absolutely. A lot easier to read.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. You have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg. Been fun being with you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast on Inside Personal Growth. We appreciate your support. And for more information about new podcasts, please go to InsidePersonalGrowth.com or any of your favorite channels to listen to our podcast. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.